Hey, good evening, everyone, and welcome. Wow, happy Thursday. It's um it's a good time to do some art. It's a good time to find community. It's a good time to lean to one another, enjoy. And so with that, we're going to present chapter 1 of The Death of Cliff Huxtable. So welcome. We're going to continue to celebrate the Huxtable family and the show, the Cosby Show, as you saw on Monday with the foreword and the prologue. There's so much to celebrate with that narrative and with the Huxtable family and the memories of A Different World and Fat Albert and Lil Bill and the Electric Company and all the if you're joining us for the first time, this series isn't about focusing on the scandal that surrounds Bill Cosby and the allegations of sexual assault. This series celebrates content that has its fingerprints on the success of our lives. Many people, Black people, chose colleges that resembled Hillman. Many people found partners in life that resembled Claire Huxtable. Many people, fashioned elements of their life to resemble the different creative moments from Bill Cosby's work, and they impacted our lives. So tonight we're going to keep that celebration going by reading chapter 1. Before we go into chapter 1, I would like to say that tonight's episode is dedicated to George Floyd. George Floyd, may you rest well. Your end was violent. Your end was one that no one deserves. And exactly like everyone with whom your death is accompanied with a hashtag and a moment of time on social media, we honor you deeper than that. We honor you much more lasting than that. And so tonight, as we talk about Theo and talk with Theo and talk through Theo, we celebrate all the Black men and women who have endured the terror that has been brought upon you, and know that you are loved. You are loved. Okay. So with that, I would like to introduce you to Vincent Powell, who will be reading in the role of Theo tonight. Vincent Powell is a filmmaker and a graduate of the USC Cinematic School of the Arts in the MFA program. He recently directed the feature film, The Freshman Year, featuring Denzel Whitaker and Charlie Ralph at Prairie View A&M University. I'm excited and proud to say that I'm one of the producers on that film. He directed multiple music videos, television ads, web campaigns for clients such as BET, Comcast, South by Southwest, Wiz Khalifa, Kurt Franklin, T.I., and many, many others. So tonight, we're going to present chapter 1, Theo. The house is quiet. The dimmer switch in the living room sets the light to a brown glow as the sun sets on the Brooklyn brownstone numbered 10 Stigwood. The double doors seal in the comfort of family values and laughter, of kindness and grace. The house is quiet. At 4:35, one of the front doors open and in walks Theo. He manages to get away from the crowd and beats everyone home for the repast. He stands in the doorway and takes in a moment to breathe in the stillness. He has never done that before. His usual entrance was always chaotic, urgent. His usual entrance was with the tales of what next thing he must have: a Gordon Gartrell shirt, a helicopter ride to prom, how he will make up with Justine. This is the first time he walks into a quiet house alone. The only thing he wants this time is for his father to be home. The house is quiet. Theo steps in and gently shuts the door behind him. He takes a few steps towards the living room and speaks out.
Dad. I don't know where you are. We rarely spoke of God or of heaven or of hell for that matter. It's just that I'm taking a chance that maybe you can hear me. Somehow that my voice may be reaching you. I guess there isn't much time before the rest get here, so I know I didn't know what to say at the cemetery. I had nothing to say at the cemetery because I knew you weren't there. I knew you weren't there. I knew you were here. Your body's there, but you, you're here. You're in this house, this home you made, this home you gave us. Okay, so thank you. Thank you for loving us. Thank you for teaching us. Thank you for loving our mother. Thank you for raising us. These are the things I can say because they're true, because they're real. Thank you for teaching us how to be the best citizens that we can be in this awful, awful world. It's not really an awful world, but today it feels awful. It feels awful because it's too hard without love. You taught me that. This is a hard world without love. You tell me that. You taught me to be easy in the hard times. But I didn't know until now what the hard times really were. You taught me to dance and to joke and to hug my wife, protect my sisters. But I guess there are some things that you didn't teach me. You didn't tell me the ways of hate. You failed me there, Dad. I had to find out outside of this haven, outside of this beautiful brownstone, what it meant to be a Black man in this world. I didn't learn the rules and the responsibilities that may save my life being a Black man outside those doors. I've learned that there are now lessons I've got to teach my own son that I didn't learn from you. Lessons I've got to teach my male students that you never taught me. You taught me the value of money, but you didn't teach me the value of my life. We were constantly reminded of how much things cost. You drill that into us. How much this costs, how much that costs. how much money that we, the kids, didn't have, and how much money you and mom did have. We knew the value of things, but you didn't teach us the value of our life. You taught us valuable lessons in a world of no worries. I left out of this house a Huxtable, and I stepped out into that world a Black man. A Black man that I was not ready to be. I needed you to teach me that too. You know something? One day I finally had the courage to talk to Walter after all those years. And I was like, Cockroach, what made you stop coming around all those years ago? This was about a year ago when you had your first stroke. And you know what? Cockroach came by to see you. Out of respect for you, out of respect for me, and we had a chance to talk. We had a chance to talk after years without talking. He said he was surprised I even asked because I never seemed to care before. I asked him why he would allow anyone to call him cockroach, to call him something so low and so dirty, something so despised. And you know what he told me, Dad? He said it never had any bad connotations or made him feel poor or dirty until he stepped into the Huxtable household. He said in the hood, he was someone to be called cockroach, but in our house, he was something. There's a difference, he told me. Your mother, she made it a point to call me Walter because she didn't want to associate me with a cockroach. And your dad made it a point to call me cockroach. But I knew what he meant behind those words. It dripped with disdain. And you know what he told me, Dad? He told me he couldn't bear it any longer. He had to leave. You were a good friend. You lived by a good standard. And he told me I lived by a standard that he knew nothing about nor cared to. And the part I can't wrap my mind around, he told me to thank you. To thank you for making sure that you protected me from a life that would teach me what it is to be a Black man in America. So often it's an ugly lesson. Cockroach is grateful he was taught. And in that conversation, I realized you failed me there. He told me that I'm the Black man that America loves, and he's the Black man that America fears. You see, Cockroach taught me how to dance. You only taught me how to perform, how to always be on 10, how to always put my best foot forward. No one ever accused me of being a Black man when I was under your wing. Too many days I wanted to be more like Cockroach and less like Cliff. But the politics of respectability is a mighty teacher, Dad. It was important to have the right friends and for the girls to date the right men and for us to sit around and listen to the elders come in and out of the house and muse on the days of the civil rights movement. But where are you? Where are you? I need you now. I need you to show me how to survive the police and the bullets and the noose of men who hate and the knees of men with badges. Where are you now? I need you to help me find the words to explain to my son how women are not to be raped. I need you to help me be a man in this awful, awful world. I need you to help me be a Black person in this awful world.
Theo continues to walk across the room to the chair nearest the kitchen door, facing the front door. He sits in the chair as if sliding into his father's shoes in his father's house. He continues.
Dad, the girls are going to be here anytime now. The women, they're all grown and all married or not. They're mothers or not, and they're amazing aunts. You know this. You saw to this. You protected it. Where other men aimed to tear it down, you protected that. You protected them. They're leaders. They're educators. They're healers. They're just like mom. And any moment from now, they'll walk through that door. They'll be reminded of the great man you were, the great man you are. They'll be comforted by so many stories of that one time with Cliff. They'll be comforted and loved by so many. The memories and the love that so many had, that so many have for you. They'll reminisce on the times of old. They'll romanticize on the days of you being the great Dr. Cliff Huxtable. I'll remember my dad. I'll mourn my father. I'll honor the man who was gentle, the man who was kind. I'll remember a man who so many got to know as that baby doctor with the beautiful family. I'll remember a man who showed us the best the world could be and kept the truth of that awful, awful world outside those doors. But when those doors open and the grieving enter, you'll leave. You'll leave and you'll be gone forever. But before you go, thank you. Rest well, Dr. Heathcliff Huxtable.
Theo slowly stands from the chair, straightening his jacket. He wipes the tears from his eyes, giving the impression of his strength. He stands, watching the doors, waiting for them to swing open, marking the beginning of the repast and the end of an era. The house is quiet. This marks the end of chapter 1, entitled Theo. Thank you all for listening to that chapter. I'd like to bring Vincent back to the frame and first just give him his flowers and say thank you, brother, for doing such a great job.
You're so welcome.
Of launching this thing and starting us off with such an amazing read.
I'm grateful. I'm grateful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
before we go to our panel to discuss our topic of the day, tell me how this landed on you, having to play such an iconic character,
Yeah.
and do this work that, because it's fan fiction and it doesn't exist on any episode of the Cosby Show. I mean, what was your process getting into reading for tonight?
At first, when you approached me with it, I thought that the title was definitely gravitating, and I had a hint of where you were going with it, and I think it's something that I can't wait to get into with the panelists. But when I thought about it from Theo's perspective as the only son with all these women that he grew up having to protect and being responsible for, it just made me feel like the brother that I am to my sister, and it made me think of my father, who raised me in a manner that protected me from the world. I knew I had black skin, but I never had to walk certain roads.
Sure.
And at first I was going to watch some shows and laugh on some memories, but then the other night happened, and I just let these words start to minister to me as a black man, especially a black man that has to process the idea of Bill Cosby, Cliff Huxtable, and what that meant to lose someone you looked up to that you thought was a light, and know that you're still in this world and you have to protect people. And I just kind of let those words flow through me that you wrote so well. I really enjoyed it, and I thank you for the creative liberty to just add some things to it. And it was really for me, it was a way to grieve what's going on in America right now.
Sure.
Just a lot of pent up frustrations that I've had that I haven't been able to express.
Yeah. We're going to talk about right now in just a moment with our panelists.
Sure.
But while I have you to myself, thinking about what we're seeing in Minneapolis right now, and in so many different places, still so many places where we are enduring terror. I think I was kind of excited about continuing, some of the fun that we had on Monday. And I just thought the emotional bottom had dropped out for me, between then and now. And let me tell you what you just gave me, Vincent. You just gave me, you just put the bottom back in, first of all. Your read was so grounding and comforting. I know we've had a couple of rehearsals. We've been rehearsing these chapters leading up to the read, and I think the previous two rehearsals, we've all been a crying mess, and just everybody's like, oh. Tonight I found a different type of strength from you, and you did such an amazing job, and I appreciate you, brother.
Thank you.
I just appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you. I'm grateful.
Yeah. Stay put. So let's go ahead and go grab our panelists and bring them in, so that we can all collectively talk about Theo, about the topics of the day. The panel discussion today, the topic is respectability politics and Black Lives Matter. Can they coexist? And I think with this chapter focusing on Theo and what it means to be a Black man in America, it raises a lot of questions of, where do we stand? How much protest, how much abiding by the rules and laws and all these things, how do we straddle those two lines? And our panelists include an amazing collective of 4 thinkers, writers, teachers, educators, and I'm just excited to have them join us this evening. We have Alexander Hardy. He is a writer, mental health advocate, a dancer, an educator, a lupus survivor. He battles spiritual ashiness, yes, brother, as co-founder of Get Some Joy, a creative wellness agency promoting mental and emotional wellness to marginalized, underserved communities via soulful storytelling, dynamic life events, and accessible wellness resources. He has written for Ebony, CNN, Esquire, Food and Wine. I'm all about the food and wine, child. The Roots and so many other resources. In particular, I'm a huge fan of his work on Very Smart Brothers. And this man actually questions whether or not snow or Delaware is a thing. So I just love this guy. Also, we have Grady Parrish Johnson. Grady is a wife, a mother, a professor, a writer. She's an alumna of Texas Southern University. She's a dear friend of mine and a colleague at Prairie View A&M University. We teach in the same department of languages and communication. She's an English professor there, and I just love her dearly. And Mr. Quincy LENEAR-GOSSFIELD. This is one of the most beautiful people on planet Earth. Go ask somebody. You don't have to. He's here to talk about all the things. He's a Chicago native, multi-talented, multidisciplinary artist, a GLAAD Award winner. And, you know, so many amazing things I can read here about him from his bio in terms of writing for HBO, BET, own so many different networks and different things, but I have to just give him his flowers that his series on Amazon Prime, The Chadwick Journals, was just this week nominated for a Daytime Emmy Award. And you also may have seen Quincy and his equally gorgeous husband, DeAndre, get married on the 56th annual Grammy Awards, where they were married by the Queen, Latifah. So many wonderful, wonderful tidbits there. And then finally, we have Miss Monique Thomas. Monique Thomas is a program coordinator at Caltech, Center for Inclusion and Diversity in Pasadena, California, where she coordinates programs, training, and she studied communication and performance studies at both the California State University at San Bernardino, as well as Cal State LA. She's a former Cal Stater. I went to Cal State Long Beach, and so we celebrate those things together. And I just saw a portion of her one-woman show, Hair Journey, an autoethnographic performance, exploring Black women's hair as the site of cultural performance and source of joy. This sister is a bad one, and let me tell you something. I'm excited to have her join us as well. And so along with Vincent, we're going to talk about the politics of respectability and Black Lives Matter and see where that line meets. Thank you all for being here today and joining this conversation during this pandemic. Can you believe it? A pandemic.
Man, listen.
We made
How
it.
y'all doing?
We're good. We're live and we're Black.
We're live and Black and deal with it. Yes. Say a thing. Yeah. Well, tell you what, let's just, collectively just kind of talk about your thoughts on the chapter, because of course the chapters for each episode, the chapters kind of lay some of the groundwork for the topic that we'll discuss going in. Just share with us how the chapter resonated with you, and talk directly to Vincent also as we talk about the chapter.
First of all, you did that.
Right.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. It moved me in a way that I wasn't hearing. A voice with it is different from seeing it on the page, and seeing what you gave to it and hearing what you brought to it. I don't know where you're pulling from, but it pulled something out of me. And I think it just brought home, especially this, I don't want to go too much into cockroach, but the whole, I just can't wait to talk about it. Both of you, this is a really timely conversation, and a very necessary discussion that we're having right now.
Yeah. When you asked me,
Vincent,
yeah, go ahead. You go ahead.
No, I just gonna say I heard it differently, because I've heard the rehearsal, and reading it was different than hearing it, but hearing it today was even different than the last time, given everything that's happening and letting that sort of settle in. And I felt a sense of peace. The first time I heard it, I felt sadness. This time I felt peace. And so, yeah, it was wonderful.
Yeah, you know what, Monique, there was I know what it was. I know exactly what it was. I think in the prior rehearsals and listening to Vincent approach the work before, we were listening to Theo, the son. And in this read, I think with the context of what we've been watching on the news and just Vincent's nature, we're going to talk about Vincent like he ain't sitting there. Just his nature in general, he became the patriarch. He became the shoulders. He became the grounding force with this particular go. And I just, I felt the same. I didn't feel a sadness or sorrow, although there was some of that. It was just like, nope, we're okay.
Yeah.
We're going to be okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Quincy.
No, I want to say congratulations to you for doing this. It's an amazing project. I'm so proud of what you've accomplished, what you've done. It's so unique and timely. And when you first came up with the idea, I was like, that's freaking brilliant. And you've done like such an amazing job. And that performance was great because I read Theo. And I think, like you guys said, I wasn't there for the rehearsals, but like the voice that I had when I read it and what I experienced from you tonight performing it were two different things. For me, I would say I have the opposite reaction that you guys have because you guys were there at the rehearsal. Now you're having a different experience. For me, when you asked me to be a part of this, none of what has now transpired had transpired. You know, so I read it with a different voice in my head. And just today, I was just sharing on my Facebook page that I was going back through all of the encounters that I've had as a young Black boy and a young Black man, and as a Black man with the police. And each one of those encounters was met with some form of aggression.
Right.
And the fact that we're talking about, like, you know, respectability politics versus Black Lives Matter, I was that respectability politic Black kid.
Right.
You know, I wasn't sagging. I wasn't, you know, I wasn't the kid that you would just eyeball and go, he's trouble. You probably wouldn't pay any attention to me because I was so sheepish and small and nerdy, and made sure that I presented myself to the best of my ability because that's what I was taught. Like, don't go out in those streets looking like a hoodlum. Don't go out in those streets doing this, doing that. Like, you're a Black man, present yourself as such. But those were the tools I was given to protect myself from what I still experienced. I still was abused and beaten by the police at 14 years old. I still was thrown across the hood of my new car and handcuffed for no reason because I fit the profile and robbed by the police. I still was, you know, flashed in the face while looking for a parking space in Glendale in my neighborhood, coming home from work and being basically threatened and cursed out by a cop for looking for a parking space. And for me, you know, it was the realization that it doesn't freaking matter for us how well presented we are to someone who has their own emotional issues and ideas about who it is you are and where you're from and what you're capable of. You can be wearing a Brook Brothers suit and it just doesn't matter. And so for me, listening to this was I felt I was Theo in that moment, you know? I literally felt him in that moment, feeling like, you know, I was taught this, but I still experienced this.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm fortunate. I'm one of the fortunate ones that all of the encounters that I have, I've been able to walk away with my life, but that could easily be me, you, or anyone in this panel at any time. So I felt a much more heavier experience watching him perform that. So it touched me in a whole nother way. Yeah. Congratulations. That was really great.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm glad that I waited to comment because anyway, I'll get to that just real quick. I finally worked up enough courage to watch the video of George Floyd. And I did not want to watch it. just something about that one. I don't know if maybe I'm at my breaking point but that one, I watched it this morning and I texted my husband. I was like, I just watched the video of George Floyd being murdered. And I was like, it's disgusting. Period. And my stomach, I felt sick. Like anyway. And when you talk about how you had to present yourself growing up in your background and whatever, just having to have a conversation with our 17-year-old is not about, just to be frank, be home on time, don't speed, whatever. It's a survival conversation. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've even had to tell my son, if a police officer says your mother is a $2, you know what? Just say, yes, sir. You know what I mean? And your goal is to live, to get home, and then we have to handle that. And so and even talking about it now, I get goosebumps, right?
Yeah.
I agree with you on the respectability politics, because my son wanted to lock his hair. And me and his dad were like, I don't know. But my husband was like, you know what? He's about to be 18, out of here. I mean, we can't. And so I connected with Vincent, with the Theo, when he said that you never taught me the value of my life and the rules and responsibilities of being a Black man. And then no one ever accused me of being a Black man. So he basically, what I gathered from that was, the experience of being Black didn't happen until he left his parents' home. And so that's what we have been trying to do for our son. Like, I don't want you to get out there and realize that you're Black. I mean, you're Black, right? But there is a difference in being hit with like crashing reality, you know what I mean, from the world. That's unforgivable. And I felt that when you were talking about, when you were reading, and I connected to my son, and I just, even now, like, I just have a sick pitting feeling in my stomach. Like this, it just, all of that. Anyway, so we'll get into that, but that was my remark for that.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of what you just said, though, I have a 1.5-year-old, and he's not 17. I see personality. I don't know who he is, and so it's, of course, my wife and I's job to just provide a space for him to grow and embrace who he is. Man, but to just look over him sleep and know that I'm going to have to explain to him that beautiful skin that he has comes at a cost that sometimes includes blood and innocent lives, and that I can't protect him from. And that, knowing that our white contemporaries don't ever have to have that conversation, is such a bottomless feeling. Such a bottomless feeling.
Yeah. We never really had to, it's interesting in that during the late 80s, when the Cosby Show, ruled television essentially, it's also running parallel with Public Enemy and NWA. And of course, the final episode of the Cosby Show ends April 30th, 1992, which is also the first night of the LA unrest. And so there's a symbolic sort of respectability politics versus the amplification of Black lives and our value through our activism. In the last, I'd say, 5 to 7 years, we've seen how things like social media has become a speaker box or an amplification of Black lives. All of you have experience working in media. From the 80s until the present day, how would you say media has impacted or accessibility to knowing what's happening on the streets or on the ground? Taking the cue from Ferguson all the way today to Minneapolis, we have social media that can tell us immediately what's happening on the ground. Whereas it took a while for us to get some information during the days of the Cosby Show. And there were things that we even missed because while Quincy's in Chicago and I'm in Virginia and, you know, Brady and Vincent are here in Houston. I mean, you couldn't have known all the things that were happening. How has media impacted the conversation of respectability and Black Lives Matter?
Oh, can I answer that real quick? I have I'm sorry. I was thinking it while you were talking. I wanted to get it out so I don't forget, right? Actually, I had a conversation with my girlfriend yesterday, and I was telling her two-part answer, but that I don't necessarily like the fact that the video of any Black person's murder is just being, it's like it's shared. And so, like we have a 9-year-old, and she doesn't have social media because she's too young to have it. But there are parents who have allow their kids at a very young age to have social media. So then I begin to wonder, these children who are accessing social media to be able to see, you know, the pictures of Michael Brown, or, you know, the video of Ahmaud Arbery, and then recently, you know, George Floyd. Like it does it desensitize them? Does it make them to where it's almost like it's normalized? Okay, a Black guy got killed. I just pulled it up on my social media. Boom, swipe up next. And it also puts me in the mindset of public lynchings, when, you know, those picnic phases, when white onlookers and spectators were had their children out and were pointing and they were in their best dress, and they had postcards and pictures, and they took, you know, souvenirs of these bodies. And I just thought to that, and I thought, are we doing the same thing, but we're engaging in it now as African Americans, because we're liking, and I mean, not liking, but we're sharing it, you know. And I just feel like that takes away from the finality of death. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I can't really describe it into words, but it's, to me, I have a problem with the videoing and the sharing and the oversharing. You know, we're at an age where there is no I guess expectation of privacy, so we share everything and we overshare.
Right.
But I just feel like when doing that, it's almost it like that, and then you know, I kind of go off into a tangent, but it puts me in the mind of, you know, when they would hang Black bodies from trees as a way to, you know, warn the new coming slaves, like, hey, he don't play over here. We got like 15 of them hanging, so just FYI. But reposting all of this, are we still doing that? I just, anyway, I could go on, but that's how I feel about the social media thing. That's it.
I feel like it can feel like trauma porn. Do you know what I mean? Like, for people who are like getting entertained by it. But one thing I was thinking, so I've been thinking a lot about George Floyd and also Christian Cooper, the gentleman in Central Park, who Amy Cooper, the woman called Karen, called the police on him. And one of the things about that, I think, I've been thinking about my own family, respectability politics. I also was raised in a family where we just didn't think that much about it. My parents were working class, and they were like, you know, you need to go and you need to do better. You need to go to college. You need to speak a certain way. You need a certain type of career. You carry yourself a certain way so that you'll be safe, right? So a lot of it was around safety. I had a conversation, my brother and I are almost 20 years apart, and he grew up in the 60s. And I said, so, you know, well, Mama and Daddy, were they down for the cause? And he's like, you know, we weren't doing that in our house. So they weren't marching. That wasn't a part of what we did, because they were so focused on family and keeping us safe and getting us to that next level. And I think in growing up like that, because we didn't have social media, as a kid in that type of family, you grow up not knowing about the things that are happening in the world, because I grew up so sheltered. When I saw Rodney King being beat in 1991, I remember thinking, wow, like that, you know, I think that's amazing. And when the police were acquitted, so many of us were surprised, because we thought, we saw that right there in living color. And it, you know, it was surprising. So what happened with the cops the other day with George Floyd of immediately being fired was amazing. It's like such progress. But I bring up the two of Christian and George because so many times we're told, and I think more so it's important for our own kids in our community, we're told, well, if you just pull your pants up, if you just don't commit a crime, if you don't even look like you're committing a crime, you'll be safe, right? And here's this man who's a birder, which I didn't even know Black people did that. And I'm like, he is beyond nerd. You know what I mean? And I am a nerd, so I can call him a nerd. But I thought of all the people to think that, you know, there was nothing threatening. There was no sort of, she was not in danger. And still his life, if he had not been recording, if so many other factors had been different, he would have been killed. And so from that stance, I think I don't want people to get desensitized from seeing it, but I want them to see as many diverse pictures of what can happen so that no one ever thinks, well, it's just those people. You know, if he hadn't been doing that, or if they hadn't thought he was, you know, suspected a crime, it doesn't matter. This was, you know, a Harvard educated birder. And the only thing that she saw was Black skin. And so it's important, I feel like, for our kids to know that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I think that the impact of media in the past couple of years, as I've become older, I was in New Orleans when I think the Trayvon Martin verdict came and things like that. And I think, you know, media is a part of our daily lives, you know, in our education, in our work, in our communication, our socialization. But it's just, I think, having increased access to knowledge of what's happening, you know, in different cities, what's happening to who, when, and where, it's just made me angrier. And I think that as a writer, as a person working in media, as a person who gathers mental health resources for people, who creates space for people to heal, to talk their shit, to cry, to scream, to vent, to whatever, I'll backtrack and say that I think the whole enterprise of respectability is a scam. It is a joke. There are plenty lynched men in three-piece suit hanging from trees. And I think it's a scam. And so there's that. But it's just made me, like, knowing that these things are happening, it's just made me talk to white people less. And I stopped writing to white people. I started writing to Black people. I started making content. I mean, not to say that I wasn't before, but like, if you as a Black person, as a Black creator, are using your precious, brilliant brain power to spit out words, and I mean, research race, do all that stuff, that's great. But like, the work will never end. I mean, if you are here to unpack every instance of white terribleness, you will be working until you die. You will be riding until you die. You will be marching until you die. It will never end. So for me, make your content for Black people. Talk to Black people. Make the content Black people need. Write the content that's going to bring Black people joy, that brings me Black joy. You know, create resources that are going to create joy for Black people, and not preoccupying or worrying myself with like, how white people are viewing me, how white people view my content, the work that I'm doing, if I'm cursing too much, if I'm using, you know, talking to Black or whatever it is, because I know that at the end of the day, that's the stuff they pay top dollar for. And that's the things they, you know, go to the end of the world to siphon just a fraction, a drip of whatever just comes naturally to us. So like the whole notion of bending over backwards, you know, if only your shirt was tucked in, if only you had on a belt, it's a scam. And I just don't think it's serving us to focus on, to live your life bent into a pretzel, trying to like please this unknown they. That's trash. I just think it's a waste of energy. As Black people, our energy would be better spent pouring into talking to, creating content for, making resources for, cultivating spaces for us and ourselves and the people who bring us Black joy.
Yeah, yeah. Quincy, what's your perspective on this? Since I think out of all of us on this panel, I think your tentacles within the entertainment industry directly, because because our source material is a bit of television, and that is your, you know, your playground essentially. How does respectability politics, Black Lives Matter, activism work show up in your work that you do?
Well, for me, it's always been difficult to divorce myself of my activism. I'm not an activist. I don't claim that title because I know people who are activists. That is what they do. And they deserve all the credit and all the applause and respect and appreciation for doing that. I'm an artist. but I'm also an artist with a message, because I am a Black man, I am a gay man, I am a human being. I like to tell stories about the human experience, especially my experience. So I consider myself more of an artivist than an activist. And so using those tools that have been made available to me to get a message across, to have a teaching moment for someone, to connect and reach people through my art. As far as like, gosh, I would, it's so funny because we back in the day when we did the DL Chronicles, we would literally have to sit and have the discussion, me and my husband DeAndre, about some of the content. So like one of the most controversial, I think, pieces of the show that we created was an episode that I wrote called Boo. And Boo was telling the story of stereotypes by using stereotypes. And it was a really, really risky take on it, because there were a lot of subtleties and there were a lot of messages that were in there, but they weren't overt. And so you for artists, you always risk people not getting it. And I can say not everybody necessarily got it. And you can piss some people off and they can think that you're doing something that you're not actually trying to do. Yeah. And I just remembered us literally sitting there having to have the conversation about what we should cut out of our scripts. Like, is this too much? Is this too forward? Is this too whatever? Mm-hmm. Like trying to force a story that's trying to tell itself, trying to force art that's trying to express itself within the confines of what's going to be, how's it going to be viewed? And, because I do feel like as artists, we do owe a responsibility to the public. We owe a responsibility, especially to our viewers, our people, because for me as an artist, I know how influential and how influenced I was by art. We're sitting here discussing the death of Cliff Huxtable.
Yeah.
I mean, that was probably one of the most influential Black series, along with A Different World, for many of us who grew up in the 80s. Yeah. So I'm not one of those artists that will say it's not my responsibility. I'm not responsible for whether or not that I'm telling the truth or I'm telling a lie. I do feel like music inspires us in ways that we cry. Music scores some of the baby making that's happened. Music scores some of our anger. We can associate so many things in the arts and in media with some type of emotion or some type of moment in our life or some type of inspiration. So you can't tell me that as an artist, we don't have that type of power. That is a power that needs to be understood and respected and yielded. I like to say the first time I left the country, and we happened to go to Paris, France, and dealing what we deal with here in the United States. We get to Paris. I didn't realize how Black it was going to be. Like, I had a completely different image, but this was the thing that I remember happening that just blew my mind. Was I'm on the train. I'm coming from the train station. I'm taking the train into the city because Paris proper is the center. And I'm on the subway with all of these people of color who look like carbon copies in Bizarro World, like flipped upside down versions of, brothers and sisters that I would see in Chicago on the L.
Come on.
And the brothers and sisters, the sisters had their cornrows and extensions. Mm-hmm. They had color in their hair.
Black people anywhere, black people everywhere.
Right? Yeah. And they got their headphones on, and they got they're doing their thing. And the guy this was hilarious. But the guy's like he's like listening to some hip hop. I can hear the beat, and he's like nigga. I didn't understand anything he was saying except nigga.
Yeah.
And
Universal.
But in that moment, I'm going, wow, that is an emulation of an art form and a personality and an attitude that was created in the United States by African Americans, by the descendants of slaves.
Absolutely.
And look at how it is affecting not just the Black Parisians, but the Muslim Parisians, the white Parisians. I mean, the youth. Like then you see the Asian kids with the blowouts, with the perms, and I'm like, wow! If we understood and fully comprehended the power of our Blackness, the power that it holds, the influence that it holds, and not give it away for somebody else to use and capitalize and aberrate. And what type of power would we have in this country? It's just like, it blew my mind because I'm like, wow, what is the last thing I expected? So for me, the whole respectability politics is a thing that I still struggle with. And I agree with brother Alexander, who said it don't matter, right? Because I know, trust me, I know it don't matter, but it's still something that, I'm like, am I going to be Langston Hughes? Am I going to be Baldwin? Like, am I going to be the butter knife or am I going to be the steak knife?
Right.
But
they belong to each other.
They belong to each other.
Yeah.
They both cut and they both have a purpose. But like, it's something, because I'm just from that period, I'm from that period. I'm from that I'm Generation Xer, and I still have a lot of the respectability things in my head. But then on the other hand, I'm like, I want to sometimes just say, fuck it, do what you got to do, because
let me tell you something.
It ain't helped thus far.
It doesn't.
Look,
they don't care.
I know I'm going to go to Alex right after I ask this question, because that is a great segue to where we are right now. I too probably come from more of a respectability place than than getting out in the streets and protesting. But I'm mad, I'm angry, and I feel like fighting, man. And what do you do with that energy, right? I toiled a bit over the title of this, even to the detail of, is it respectability politics versus Black Lives Matter, or is it respectability politics and Black Lives Matter? And I went with the and because I wanted to talk about the possibility of those two, the butter knife and the steak knife, sharing space with one another. I mean, what happens, and I think it also comes back full circle to this idea of two separate sides of yourself sharing the same space, right? And how do you negotiate those days when, as a teacher or as someone who is constantly working to set examples and teach lessons and all these things, when do I get to let my hair down and go, fuck all of this, and I'm angry and I'm tired of looking up and being worried about my brothers. I had a flashlight flashed in my eyes about a year ago, walking my dog with my wife, who is white, and I'm like, who do I cuss out? Because the little rent-a-cop in our neighborhood, from here up sees me as a guy, and at night got a flashlight in my eyes. Like, so how do you negotiate the two so that you can kind of be a whole person in these times?
Lots of brown liquor.
Yeah.
It makes
You nailed it.
That's what I have to come home to do. Look, I mean, I don't want to monopolize, but if I can answer on that, the experience that I just recently have, like a lot of the shows, most of the television shows that we worked on were white shows, right? We've been producers on primarily white shows, never worked on other than my own show. Sure. Never had to work in an environment with my own, and being the only two Black faces often in the room, in the producer's position, we've we've had to, for me, because I'm also a Chicagoan, and then I have that radical nature that I have to subdue sometimes. I have to swallow it. My husband's approach is much different. He's definitely much more of a butter knife. I'm much more of the steak knife. But knowing that I'm trying to navigate this system to get to a point where we can become the decision makers, and we can open the doors, and we can create the content, and we can be the conduits for the change that we need, sometimes requires me to have to subdue those moments where I just want to cut somebody.
Yeah.
And I have to take it. I have to take I have to take the licks, the punches, and trust me, microaggressions, macroaggressions, all of them. And sometimes you have to come home, because look, at this moment I can go, it's forget it, and I'm going to address this head on, and then we're labeled as not team players. We're labeled as the angry black men. We're ostracized within the workplace. We're not asked to come to the next show. We're not at the top of the call list any longer. And then we're out of work, and nothing that we went there to achieve has happened. And so having to deal with that, I often would just feel like we would just come home and we would just pour some brown.
Yeah.
Just to like decompress, blow it off, and go back and try it again the next day. Until we are at that point where we're the ones making the decisions, So trying to work within the system, it's difficult. It's very difficult in many cases.
Yeah,
it is
a lot of stress.
I'm getting hot just listening. Like, my body, like, I'm just hot because my first instinct is fuck them. Like, I don't think that Black Lives Matter and respectability politics can exist in the same space, because respectability politics says like there is some what's the word? Arbitrarily set mark you must meet to be considered fully human. Like, so how asinine is it to 3/5 human our own people because they're not polished enough, or because they don't speak well enough, or to not say that they're not worthy of being fully accepted and seen as professional, as being trustworthy, as not being seen as a threat. So no, I don't think that the two can coexist, because I mean, if Black Lives Matter, then Black Lives Matter. The uneducated ones, the ones that cuss, the ones that got a whole bunch of kids, the ones that like all the ones that your cousins that you ain't bringing, that you not, that you that you acknowledge at the family reunion, but you're not, bringing with you in public. They all matter. They're all parts of Blackness. And I think that we are doing ourselves a disservice. I mean, Quincy, for example, if you had given into that inner hater, that inner they, and dumb down your work. Like, DL Chronicles was instrumental in my young homo thug life. Just know that. But like, if you had like made it less Black, less radical, less gritty, less real, like it would have been Queer as Folk. And so like that's necessary. Like the Blackness is what people remember. Like people, like being Black is the littest thing ever. So I just think that we're doing ourselves and the world a disservice by dumbing that down to meet the standards of some unknown they. Because again, like, in this time, I think it's a great time of uncertainty, sure, but I also think it's a time for us to don't worry about that table, fuck that table, make your own table. We're brilliant. Like I really want more of us to know that, like really know it. So that you don't spend your life bending over backwards for lesser beings, honestly, who don't realize your brilliance, or who can't see all that you have to offer, or to know that like all the things that make you Black or cool or whatever, like are not a threat. And that anyone who is threatened by you just being how you show up in the world, that says more about them than you, obviously. And that it's just free your mind.
I wonder where there's space, and this is me just what I always am thinking about. So I watched I Am Not Your Negro last night because I needed something like that in my life, and I hadn't seen it yet, and fell back in love with James Baldwin. And there was a quote that he said that I like took to heart and actually like recorded it. But he said, you know, the line that separates a witness from an actor is a very thin line indeed. Nevertheless, the line is real. I had to accept that part of my responsibility as a witness was to move as largely and as freely as possible to write the story and get it out. And so I wonder, because I find myself personally on that more witness line and not the actor. A few years ago, am I still on? I can't. Okay. A few years ago, I had an opportunity to march with Black Lives Matter. So I go to this church it's a radical, mostly white church, but we have diversity. And we were saying that we were radical. And I'm always pushing back and saying, you're not as radical as you think you are, but okay. So we went on a march for Black Lives Matter. And this is the church. And I will never forget this. It's a mostly white crowd. And we're marching. And we marched around Old Town Pasadena. The cops were outside waving at us. Like, it was just like, and I was like, oh, I'm marching. Look at me. This is so great. So then the next year, I marched with Black Lives Matter. And we went up to this park, the northwest part of town, and we got off the sidewalk. So the first walk that I went on, we were walking around the sidewalk, very respectable, right? We got off the sidewalk and started walking in the middle of the street and stopping traffic. And I was like, oh, we're marching. Oh shit. Like I did not know that this is kind of marching I was gonna be doing. So we get to Old Town Pasadena, which is the heart of everything, all the restaurants, shops, the Tiffany store, everything. And we get to an intersection and the kids drop their bodies and stop traffic. And they start doing music and they start doing poetry and they start doing chants and they're just there. And all these people, and this is around 6 o'clock in the evening on a Saturday when people are trying to get to dinner and the movie and whatever, they disrupted. And the adults gathered around them to protect them from the traffic and from the hate and whatnot. And the young woman who organized it is incredible and is herself targeted by the police very often because of her work. But she protected those kids and instructed all the adults on how to protect them. She went up to the actual cars, ended up hugging one of the guys yelling at her in his SUV because she explained to him, this is what we're marching for. This is what democracy looks like. I found myself on the sidewalk. And there was this moment where I said, I could step out. I need to step out. I need to step out and be a part of this. I need to be protecting those children. But part of me was like, I don't make enough money to go fuck it. If I get fired, I can just, I got money to bail myself out and I'm not poor enough to struggle like that. You know what I mean? I'm in a spot where I don't know what I can risk. I'm afraid of the risk.
Sure.
What will it look like? Will I get fired? All that stuff started running through my head. If I had it to do over again, I think my choice would be different. But I look back at that as that moment of me trying to, and I say that because I think a lot of people find themselves that way. And I think we're getting to a point where you're going to have to just pick a side and figure out what you're doing. But I think for us, particularly those respectability babies from Gen X, it's been challenging to step outside of that. And I think the young people, what I appreciate is that the younger generation is showing us how. And they're saying, we tried it your way. As brother Alex was saying, it did not work. And we've got to get more. So that's just, you know what I mean? But it was like, I remember that's my analogy. I remember standing on the sidewalk looking in the street, and then I filmed it because I was like, okay, I'll just witness it, right? But stepping out and being an actor, I wasn't sure if I could do that.
I was gonna say, I personally feel like everybody has a place in the movement, right? And not to take away from anybody's place, and not even putting it in terms of hierarchy. I'm not even saying that at all. But I feel like for me personally, I am not a foot soldier. Does that make sense? Like I'm all for I'll use the word rally, but more in terms of like a metaphor, not really like a physical meetup. But I'm all for trying to, amp up change and looking for ways to, promote change and, shed light on situations or what have you. But I feel like for me, because I'm a writer, I feel like my goal in the movement would be to document it from my perspective as a mother, as a wife, as a Black woman. You know what I'm saying? I feel like that is what my job is, or what I'm supposed to do in this movement. Everybody doesn't need to be, marching off McGregor tomorrow. I mean, somebody needs to be there to write about it from the lens of the oppressed Black person, not, ABC 13 News with Alona Carson. Like, I don't really know her, you know what I mean? No shade to her, but there's a different perspective when you have a Black voice or a Black writer with the pen in hand. You know what I'm saying? And then to that point, with being able to kind of change the narrative or even create my own narrative, the beauty of working at a university, an HBCU for that matter, is that we kind of have this weird unspoken, but we all know if you Black, you can kind of like make your lesson, make your syllabus and your lesson, you know what I mean? Kind of like you can discuss things like that. So I do that in my class. I teach a humanities course and we go there. Like, we have those conversations about LGBT, what it means to be Black and to be gay. I have students who in class disclose, hey, I have never been to the Galleria before. What do I do if I have to go on an internship interview? Professor, what am I supposed to do with that? I don't even know what that looks like. So we can have those kinds of conversations. But then again, that's also a safe space. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But I just feel like if we all figure out what our gifts are, what our strengths are, then we can really galvanize a movement in our community collectively, whether you're in Texas or Chicago or whatever. But I think people need to get away from trying to be in the spotlight. You know what I'm saying? I'm more of a behind the scenes kind of person. I'm totally fine with writing everything down and trying to, figure out and maybe pitch it here, pitch it there to get it published, right? That's my job. And I think as artists, all of us being here on this panel, we all kind of skate around in the same realm. You know what I mean? Like what you're doing right now, TDB. You know what I'm saying? So we all are playing our part. But I think that at the moment where you have people who are angry, the first thing you want to go do is you want to get that off. You know what I'm saying? And as artists, you can paint, you can write, you can sing, you can draw, you can make music, you can write a script. You know what I'm saying? To get that off of you, because we internalize stuff as artists, correct? And so I know when I internalize everything, I'm up till 3-4 o'clock in the morning hollering at TV. Like,
and she is.
Yeah. Off of me, because that creativity, that anger, that hostility, that pain, I got to get that off of me before I've been up for days sometimes just trying to get all of that emotion off of me. And so we collectively have created our own safe havens, our own ways to kind of disperse that energy. So we're not out here marching, rioting, looting, whatever. But then what does that look like for people who don't have access to stuff like that, or even people to be able to kind of guide them and show them because they are angry, So, and I feel like, so all that being said, I truly, truly feel like if we work within our gifts and within our talents, we can start to just put into place different things where it's not just a big blast of anger every time, because y'all know what's gonna happen. I mean, it's almost like every summer I'm kind of sitting like, okay, so who Black gonna die now? You know what I mean? Because I don't know if y'all remember in 2014, it was like I don't have my dates right, but I remember one summer it was like Tamir Rice, Sandra Bland, Freddie.
That was the year, yeah.
Oh my God! Like it was just every day, and it would. But it got to the point to where next summer, it was a little bit of okay, well, not so bad. But this summer, I mean, we are on fire, and we're not even in June, so a whole lot of summer to go through.
Yeah,
with a lot of angry Black people, and not enough brown liquor, right?
Well, also, I think,
and there's a pandemic.
but you know what? And that's what I was going to point out, though. I think the benefit of the pandemic is that we have time to concentrate on what's the matter. And I think a lot of times some of us can be numbed into thinking that life is okay and life is better because we've arrived, because our house is a certain square footage, our office is at a certain corner of the building, our title is a certain title, our kids are all educated with degrees, whatever you want to look at as your little beacon of success. Now everybody's at home with these phones in their hands, and we can do nothing but accept the fact that something happened in Central Park, something happened in Minneapolis, and it's unfair, it's unjust, and whatever privilege, because I talk a lot about, like, there's Black privilege as well. The Blacks that think that they've arrived so much to where they could never be pulled over, they could never have a gun drawn on them, they could never be at the end of an altercation with a cop. And I remind people that Trayvon Martin didn't die at the hands of a cop. You know, that our friend in Atlanta, Ahmaud Arbery, he didn't die at the hands of a currently employed law enforcement officer. And your neighbor and your church member, that's been burning my blood up. The white church folk that love Jesus and their guns, but can't see the fact that I live in the world that I'm completely disenfranchised. And I tell them a lot that we're praying to God about two different things. Me, as I've been a preacher since I was 15 and licensed, ordained in multiple denominations. And I find myself around these white evangelicals, and you sing the songs and you say you love God, but our prayers aren't the same. You don't have to pray for your grandmama diabetes the way we got to pray for stuff like that, because you were never predisposed as a race to deal with certain health situations. The reason that COVID-19 can have you marching and arguing about how you want to go and get your hair cut is because Negroes go outside with the COVID in the air, and we're dying at alarming rates. Look at Louisiana and look at Detroit and look at Chicago, but you can't see that it's not the same for us. And so I have a whole different rant I do for the white evangelicals who are NRA card holders and love Jesus and all this stuff. It's not the same God. Anyway, my point is that we right now during this pandemic, everyone's aware because we're all disarmed. And now the only other report outside of COVID numbers is what happened in Central Park. And luckily that was overtaken after Franklin Templeton hurried up and fired her. The dog company, they took the dog back. So she got dealt with. Amy's done. She lost her. Somebody said she mortgaged her dog and her job to call 911 on a Black man. She's done. And now we were all able to pay attention to this man on the ground with this cop that looked like he didn't have a care in the world knelt over him. And now we can also address the fact that Amy Klobuchar, when she had an opportunity to reprimand this cop for the other 8 complaints on his record, she overlooked those complaints. So I'm grateful that you're not in the running anymore, Amy. And let's address all this stuff. And I think that goes to your point of where it takes us in different levels and different spaces and different places. You don't want my cousin Pookie to be the one that's running for office because he ain't gonna do stuff the way you want it done. But you need somebody running for office, and you need Pookie on the corner, and together they can volley back and forth to make some kind of change happen.
Yeah, I have to unfortunately step in and say we're nearing the end of our time in this session because we can we not do this all night? We can. I feel like
yes, we can.
Especially if Quincy got his brown liquor going.
Yes, we can.
I'm trying to abstain.
Man, I'm telling you, with the last 10 minutes that we have here, I've mapped out about an hour and a half for the episodes, with the first half hour for the reading and then an hour discussion, and that's nearing an end here. I want to finish the series, each episode of the series, with a unifying question of who is your favorite Huxtable? I'm going to lighten it a little bit.
Oh my gosh.
You know, bring us some levity a little bit and open it to the viewers who are watching. I know we have been showing some of the comments from both YouTube and Facebook and Twitter on our feed, and we just appreciate everyone watching, and thank you for contributing to the conversation. Thank you for contributing to the conversation offline as well, out in all the various ways that you participate in the world. Right now, my favorite t-shirt, my favorite meme, which has become a state of mind, is be authentically you, they'll adjust. And I love that sentiment, because it just means we don't have to apologize. We don't have to, countercorrect. We don't have to do a whole lot to make other people okay with us. They will adjust, whoever the they is. And I think we've talked a lot about that tonight. And we've got our walking orders. Live in your gifts, celebrate who you are, do the work in the ways that you can, the ways that you want to, whether it's in the classroom, behind the media, on the streets, wherever you feel like you can best serve moving forward. But I'm going to raise our spirits a little bit with this final question and ask, who is your favorite Huxtable, and which Huxtable are you most like? So it might be two different characters.
Wow.
We're going to take the time to get an answer from each of you. And we will also simultaneously put up already our great Valicia Tolliver's launched us off with Vanessa. So tell you what, I'm going to start with Quincy and then Alex and then Monique and then Grady. And then finally with my guy, Vincent. Tell us, who's your favorite Huxtable and which one are you most like?
My favorite Huxtable, I would have to say, was Claire Huxtable. There was just something fascinating about her, her strength, her poise, her quick wit. She was just so sophisticated and slick. And I loved Claire. I would say the Huxtable that I was most like, there was only one guy in the house, but I can't say that I was most like him. I was actually more like Denise Huxtable, because she was kind of the rebel artist of the family. She was a nonconformist. She kind of challenged the status quo of the house. And for some reason, growing up, I just really, her latter years on the show, her teen to young adult years was the period where I really, I just really felt her. She was just that artist. She had that it factor. Yeah, she had that it factor, and there was something mysterious about her that I loved. Plus, I had a big crush on her. I did not actually look, as gay as I am, I did not have a crush on Theo. I had a crush on Denise.
Oh yeah, Alex, tell us about your choices.
Well, it's definitely not Vanessa. I think that I think that Quincy stole my answers, and I think my favorite is Claire, because she was not here for the bullshit. And I think that regardless of what was going on in the house, she was able to be a voice of reason, and just keep Cliff in his place. And also, I just think that in a house full of so many people with all these different personalities, it took a lot to to still stand out and be I don't know, just a strong opinionated person. When I feel like as a mom, it would have been easy to be a pushover and let all the kids run the house. And the one who I think I most like is probably Denise. Also like Quincy. I think that she was going to do her own thing regardless. I think that, Claire and Cliff had all these respectable ideals for their children. And Denise was like, that's cool, but I'm going to go over here and do that. And that really resonates with me. So I rock with Denise. Shout out to Denise.
Monique, tell us who you select.
I think my favorite, going with the theme, is Claire. She showed me what Black feminism really was, what it meant to be a womanist and to just stand in your own space and your own power. She was so inspiring. But the one that I was most like, and I don't know how I feel about that, Alex, was Vanessa. And I think, I'm like, what's wrong with Vanessa? Because Vanessa and I are the same age. And so when the Cosby Show premiered, everything Vanessa was going through, I was going through. There was a boy, Robert, I had a boy that I had a crush on that looked like Robert. It was just, our lives were paralleling. So for me, that was who I most related to, just because we were so similar in age and going through similar things.
Awesome. Vanessa. Grady, who do you select?
Okay. So my favorite Huxtable, I wish I could have gone first, but whatever.
Right.
Also my answers, but my Huxtable was Claire, because she just had. I don't really know. Claire reminded me of my mother, and I say that because my mother is also an attorney. And the way that woman, and I'm talking about my mom and Claire, because right now they one person, would just walk into a room and just, I mean, demand. I mean, like not and there were certain scenes where, you know, Claire would, you know, she would kind of walk in, everybody kind of be like, all right, you know, whatever. But I remember watching my mother walk into a courtroom or walk into her office, or, you know, just in any setting, and people were just like drawn to her, and it was this way with words. You know what I mean? How it's like, did you just cuss me out? You know, like, oh, okay. And it's like, but I think she's called me stupid. Like, but she said it so nice. Like, you know, okay, I don't feel so bad, right? And so I always wanted to grow up and be a way with words where it was just so, you know, eloquent and, you know, well put together. And then my spirit animal would be Denise, because I am definitely the weird artsy one between my sister and I. Kind of fly by seat of my pants, like, oh, I had to put gas in the car. Oh, okay, well, I didn't think that through, but so that, you know, kind of like, oh yeah, I guess I can't go live under a bridge and do poetry.
Oh,
okay,
goodness.
you know? So those are my kids.
Blessed. Vincent.
I think that my favorite was Heathcliff, and a strong reason is the tuxedo he had on when they redid the opener.
Mm-hmm.
He was just fly, and the dancing was funny, and it's the thing we didn't talk about tonight, like how you can love Cliff so much and Bill be Bill. But the person I was most like was Rudy. I was Rudy's age, so the things that interested Rudy interested me, and the things that the conversation she had with her friends, and there were it was fun to look at that house from her perspective.
Sure.
And try to figure it out. Yeah.
In the last episode, I talked about the Huxtable I felt like I was most like, which was definitely a cross between Vanessa and Theo. It was kind of like a hybrid, you know, kid that way. But my favorite character, and a couple people who have kind of been working closely with me as I've put this together, and I'll acknowledge my team in just a second before we sign off. But my favorite character was one we never saw the entire series. My favorite character the entire series of the Cosby Show was Eunice Chantilly. Eunice Chantilly was my, and when I tell you, when I decided to write the book, I could not wait to give Eunice her chapter, her voice. It's the one character that worked Claire. Claire kept her cool about everything and everyone, but the absolute
damn Eunice
of Eunice Chantilly brought her to a place of reckoning. And when we get to the Eunice chapter, I've got some things that I'm so excited to share about Eunice's story that people may or may not be ready for, and I won't spoil them here today. If you've read the book, you already know. If you have not, don't read nothing. Just wait. Because we give you goods on Eunice, Cliff, and Claire, you will have been brought to the goods. But my point, though, with saying Eunice is that, you know, we celebrate Claire, and we've just, you know, celebrated Mother's Day. There was no one more refined and more beautiful and played exquisitely by Felicia Rashad. And I think in these times when we are reaching for someone to give us comfort, you know, call your family, reach out to your mothers, contact your fathers, check on your brothers, make sure your sisters are okay, and make sure that the people who you love know that you love them, right? And so I want to finish today's conversation by saying, I want to say I love my panelists, every one of you. I'm such a huge fan of all of you. You were all selected deliberately because I think you're the most progressive and in your own ways activist for the betterment of us all, whether it's through your work in media or in the classroom, in front of a collective, giving us the word, and or on stage, healing us through performance. I just honor you all, and I thank you for being here today.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. We will leave in the comments on the various platforms where you can see tonight ways that you can stay in touch with all of our panelists through their social media platforms. Ad nauseum, we've been posting and posting, come see this, watch this, and tagging all of them. So there's no shortage of ways to reach them in the various places. If they have work to be seen and shared, do support them. That's how our activism, that's how our community grows and strengthens moving forward. As we've seen so many times, living in our gifts and celebrating ourselves and each other. I want to thank my team, Laura Burks, who's running the switcher and all the changing of the faces and things and the graphics and whatnot. I couldn't do it without Laura. I want to thank Juwan Jennings. He's our production manager. He's coordinated all of our rehearsals and the people and getting our headshots and bios. So the content that you see, he plus Cameron Swan have been working diligently to make sure that we have material to blast all over the socials. And our publicist, Amarachi Ade, who has given many, many hours sending out press releases to different outlets and helping us grow this project. I want to thank you for watching and giving your comments. And, we will continue to celebrate you by, your comments and placing them on the screen there as well. We will, ask you to submit questions. So look ahead in the series and see the topics that we're talking about. Feel free to read the book if you like, but if there are questions on any of the topics that we're talking about, feel free to chime in with those questions and we'll gladly incorporate them into the conversation. Be safe and be good to each other. Tell stories. Write poems, make music, make love, drink brown liquor, do the things that make you happy, do the things that make you whole. All right. I love you. I will see you on Monday at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern, where we will present Chapter 2, Denise. It was not by accident that we started tonight on a Thursday night on the East Coast at 8 p.m. because on the 8 p.m. on the East Coast on a Thursday night would have been when the Cosby Show would have aired. And so it was purposeful that we chose tonight at this time to launch the original readings. And we will keep that going on Monday with Denise. Denise will be portrayed by the great Red Summer, and other characters will be brought into the fold on Monday night. Delia Moore will be playing Vanessa. Mo Mashadi will be playing Sandra. Jeremy Irwin will be playing Butch, the gravedigger. I have to update the flyer so that we incorporate the name of Butch, the gravedigger. Everybody should have a name. And the topic of that particular session is the emotional violence of shaming. When we think about Lisa Bonet and the character of Denise, we think about the most eclectic collective of actor and character on the show, but also the trials she endured being different from the rest, both as Lisa and as Denise. And the panelists for that particular session will see the return of Grady Paris Johnson, to discuss this matter. We'll also add Ashley Daniels, who is a professor at the university at Prairie View A&M University and also a graduate of TSU as well. She also will be portraying the role of Rudy later on. And I have to also mention Grady, our great Grady here, is portraying the character of Olivia. So you'll see more of Grady both as a panelist, but as well as a performer. We will also be joined by Dr. Stella Smith. She is one of the directors of the Mach 3 Center at Prairie View, and she'll, tell us more about the center when she comes on Monday. And Risakat Okideji, I'm going to mess that up. I do that every single time. But Risakat, the gorgeous, amazing educator from the DC area, and just revolutionary woman in herself. She's going to be rounding out our panel. Okidiye. There we go. All right. So join us on Monday. Come back Monday evening, and watch and share. Let everybody know what we're doing here. And I love you. All right. Good night. Take care now.